I am ready to go whenever you are. Yep, sounds good,
Well,
Doug.
perfect, perfect. Well, I appreciate it. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say welcome to everyone from the NOVVIA group to our first ever group-wide NOVVIA leadership training program. So it's exciting. Um, Mainly, just a couple of things. A thank you to the executive leadership team, um, just for sponsoring this, for saying, hey, this is important. We want to invest in the people. We want to invest in our leaders and the future. So a big thank you to them. A thank you to each of you. First, congratulations for being selected. You were handpicked by the executive leadership team to be on this training program, to be a part of it. So congratulations and thank you for attending. I know it's a lot of time and I know everybody's working very hard. There's a lot going on, so I do appreciate people taking time each week to go through this. I think you'll find it valuable. And I'd like to thank AIM as well. Matt's on from AIM, just for providing this training. It's an excellent program. Speaking from experience, I went through this program about 2 years ago. And it's really a good program. I think you're going to find a lot of value, a lot of great tips, techniques, and you'll learn a lot. I think if you apply yourself and kind of you'll get out of it what you put into it. So just a couple reminders before we get started. Each week I will send out to you. Scott will talk to to me after the training course each week, and we'll get together what the following week agenda will be and all the materials, and we will get that out to you before that training course so that you're able to take a look at that. You can print it out if you would like. You have the materials there for you. You could take notes. Sometimes there's sheets or workbooks are good for you to jot down notes on. Um, and I'll get those out to you each week and encourage you to print those and have those available for you. Also, be ready for the class each week. So when you get those packets, those printouts, take a look at what the topics are, what's going to be covered on the agenda, and see if you have specific questions, maybe specific scenarios, things you want to talk about. This is really the NOVVIA Group's training program. So Scott and AIM are helping us to lead this program, but this is ours and what direction we want to go and the questions we want to ask and the things we want to talk about. So be prepared with that. Be early so that we're ready to go each week. There's a lot to cover. And I know, again, everybody's busy, but, if you have to jump off for a minute, you have to jump off, but try to be early and participate as much as you can. Encourage everyone, please have your cameras on because we want it to be interactive. Scott's going to ask questions. He's going to open things up for discussions, and just so that everybody can feel a little bit more together, even though we're not all in the same place. And again, participate. If you can find a nice quiet place is ideal. If that's an office, your office, another office, a conference room, if you're working remotely, a spot at home, just where you can really focus and commit and engage to kind of participating in this event. So again, it's our training course. We want to guide it. We want to lead it. So be prepared to ask questions, specific scenarios, whatever you've got that can help move things along. So with that said, I'm going to do a quick bio on our trainer, our leader for this training course. His name's Scott Paris, and he is a senior AIM consultant and instructor. He's been doing this for a long time, and he does a great job at it. He's a lot of leadership courses that I've been a part of and witnessed Scott as both participants and observing those training courses. So Scott, he's a highly skilled business consultant focused on partnering with both business leaders and aspiring contributors to help them achieve their personal and business goals. For over 20 years, Scott has facilitated training, developed curriculum, and facilitated coaching at leading organizations such as General Electric, Edward Jones, Citibank, and Express Scripts. As a trainer facilitator, Scott has delivered sales, leadership, presentation skills, and other key topics. His training expertise is in facilitated, discussion-focused training for either small or large groups. Scott has experience in leading and coaching, often utilizing role-playing to reinforce and strengthen skills. Scott has experience in helping individuals and executives further their leadership acumen through business development coaching. Scott is a certified DISC workplace facilitator and holds a Bachelor's of Science from Truman State University. So with that said, I am going to turn it over. Thank you all again for being here. Ask questions, participate, enjoy. I'm going to step back and observe, and I'm going to turn it over to Scott to kind of lead us on this leadership training journey. Scott?
Awesome. Doug, thanks so much. And again, really appreciate the NOVVIA group for letting us come in and do this. Really excited. Again, my name's Scott Paris. Hope you enjoy the training as we go through 2 hours each week, talking about a number of different leadership topics. A couple things before we get going. First, I also wanted to introduce, and I believe Doug did as well, Matt Weidman. Matt is playing the role of producer today. And so for whatever reason, as we go through this, if you have any tech issues, he can certainly help you with that. But he'll be on at least for the first part of the webcast just to make sure we're doing okay. So Matt, thanks so much for joining. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I'm going to ask you to do this for me. If you would open your chat function, and once you do that, set it to, I think it looks like for this one, it's meeting group chat or all. And then once you do that, can you type in, yes, I can hear you, or where you're dialing in from, or the temperature it is today. If you would just do that for me, just want to make sure everybody's connected. Oh, Danielle, you're where I'm at. It's 1 billion degrees in St. Louis. Yes, I can hear. Nice. There we go, Evan, Corey. I do that for a couple of reasons. First, I have this ongoing nightmare that I get halfway through a presentation and nobody can hear me. That way we're good. The second reason I do that is one of the ways that we'll stay connected is through this chat. Oh man, there's a bunch, ton, awesome. Hot land, I bet it's hot. Bet it's hot. So one of the reasons is to make sure I know you can hear me. The other is from time to time, I'll say, hey, if you would put this in the chat function, especially when we have a larger group, it's a great way to stay connected. By the same token, if for every reason, as we go through this, you got a question, you want to make a comment, please feel free to come off mute. The system kind of pre-does that. I'm trying to manage background noise. The one thing I would say is if you come off mute, make a comment, ask a question, just say, hey, this is Ronald, or hey, this is Carlos. That way we know who's talking. And what I'm going to try to do as well as we go through is from time to time just open it up completely. But I, again, just want to be really conscious of background noise. Along with that, Doug mentioned each week we'll have a handout. This week, it's really two things because we're starting with DISC. So hopefully you got your DISC assessment, 20-page document. And then there was also a worksheet that we forwarded to you separately. Hopefully you've got that, you've got it printed. We're going to spend all of the time today and potentially sometime next week on DISC, just kind of depending on how far we get with it. I love talking about DISC. I think it's a great resource, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I always find it really interesting because I'll have people say, I did an assessment for DISC in 15 minutes and it told me everything I need to know about me. So just, I always find that really, really interesting. So hopefully you've got that in front. Please take notes. Please participate. I know you've all got a lot on your plate. Hopefully this is helpful. What else? I mean, I think that's the big things out of the gate. Oh, one other thing. Can you do that? And I'm going to have you do this in the chat as well. I'm assuming that the majority of you have folks that report to you, but there's always that possibility that some of you don't. Either way is cool. If you would do this for me, if you would put in the chat function, if you have folks that report to you, if you would type in yes and the number, so yes and 34, yes and 3, or just type in no. Oh, perfect. Just like that. Thanks, Danielle. Danielle is, so I'm seeing 1 to 3. Some of you don't. Interesting. It's all kind of, ooh, 1, 7, 17. Wow. Interesting. Okay. Keep going. I'm not going to hold it against you either way. The reason I do that is one of the things I'd really challenge you to think about is this. As we go through every single week, Corey, 8, as we go through this every week, as we go and talk about the curriculum, think about, of course, how it applies to your life. Holy cow, direct 7 and indirect 75. That just caught my, that's a lot, folks. Wow. Think about how some of this will help you, but think about how some of this will help folks that report to you as well. Okay. And for those of you that don't have directs, you may be having directs at some point in the future. And you're always influencing other people. Okay. So just wanted to mention that right out of the gate. I think that's the big stuff I wanted to hit. Okay. So yes, have folks that report through folks. Okay. So I'm going to do one other thing. And I think this will help. We'll do it a couple of different times today, but I'm going to experiment with it first. I don't know how many of you have done this. As we go through this, one great way to have some other discussions is to break into smaller groups. And we can do that through the Teams or through this online. So I want to try it out. So here's what's going to happen in a minute. I'm going to randomly put you into breakout rooms. And I'm going to do, how am I going to get there? Oh, I'm going to put you in breakouts, and you're going to be in 2 to 3 participants in a group. What's going to happen is when I do that, in a minute, I'm going to say I'm going to open all rooms. Okay. When I say I'm going to open all rooms, you're going to be prompted on your system to go to a breakout. And so it's going to be 2 to 3 people. All I'm going to ask you to do really, really quickly with those 2 to 3 people is just introduce yourself. We're going to do it for no longer than a couple of minutes, and then we'll come right back here. So don't panic, okay? So I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and open all the, one other thing. When you accept the prompt in the breakout, you will probably have to come off of mute. So just be prepared to do that as well. Okay, everybody good? 3, 2, 1. So I think we're good. I think we're good. So we're ready to dive into the first module, which is DISC. And again, we'll talk about it some today. We have more time. We'll talk about it next time. So hopefully you've got your DISC assessment, the 20-pager in front of you. Don't worry about the other worksheet for now. But, I just want to give you an overview first. Obviously, you took DISC and then you received your version of the DISC and then you printed it off. DISC is actually a learning model developed from research. It's been for over 30 years, provides common language that's shared with others. How do you connect with others? And all that really means is, how do you communicate with other folks? How do you react to other folks? That's what DISC is all about. As we go through this, just know that the way the DISC is set up, it starts with you. How do you communicate? How do you react to others? And then it broadens out to how do you communicate with other people? Okay. So with that in mind, I want to start with a little bit of an experiment to get to where we need to go. I want you to think about this. This starts, you see on this next slide, how do you see yourself? Step back. This is you at work. Home's a different class. I don't deal with that. But I want you to think about yourself at work. You have a choice here. When you think of yourself at work, which of these 2 sides do you prefer? Do you prefer, man, I am about fast-paced and outspoken, or I am about being cautious and reflective, or I'm in the middle? I'm going to ask you to do this for me in the chat function. If you're fast-paced, outspoken, put FO. If you're more cautious and reflective, put CR, or you can put M for middle. When you think of yourself, oh man, interesting. So I look at this, I'm seeing a lot of FOs, M. I see a couple of CRs. Okay. But it looks to me like the middle. Okay. So fast-paced, outspoken. Anybody willing to Hey, Jay, sorry to pick on you, Jay. So you put fast paced and outspoken. Do you mind coming off mute? Why did you pick fast paced and outspoken, if you don't mind me asking?
It's mostly just related to how I do my job.
Okay.
We're 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 tasked with doing a lot of projects simultaneously, and
Yeah.
if we need to move fast, we need to explain to people what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and move as quickly as we can to implement.
You've got a lot on your plate. You got a lot going at the same time.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, Jay. Really appreciate it. The other side was the CR. It's C client. I don't know what the first name is. Do you mind coming off and explaining why you picked cautious and reflective? Just if you don't mind me asking.
Hi, Kristen. Yeah,
Hey, Kristen.
I'm more of a sit back and kind of listen first before I react. I just prefer to kind of hear the whole, all the options first before I.
Gotcha. Fair enough. The most important thing I want everybody to take away as we go through this is everybody has a different style. And it totally depends on the role, your preferences, those sorts of things. So you're either going to be more fast-paced, outspoken, cautious, reflective, somewhere in the middle. That's one aspect, north to south. The other one is going left to right. So left to right, it's if you go all the way to the left, when you think of yourself at work, you're more either questioning and skeptical. And by that, I mean, ask a lot of questions. You're looking for proof, those sorts of things, or you're more accepting and warm. Take things a little bit more face value. Okay. I'm going to ask, just like we did the last time. Some of you are already doing it. Thanks so much. If you're more questioning and skeptical, can you put in QS? If you're more accepting and warm, put AW. Ooh, a lot of QSs. Or you can put M for middle, of course. I'm trying to figure out where my tags started. I think right about there. So it's a little bit more across the board. Corey, do you mind coming off mute and talking about why you would see yourself a little more questioning and skeptical?
Yeah, I find myself when someone comes to me with either a problem or they come to me with a solution, my mind goes straight to, well, what could go wrong with that option.
So you start to think about what are the risks, what are the concerns, what are the challenges?
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Okay. To the right, we had AEW, AEW, AEW. Danielle, do you mind sharing why you went with more accepting and warm?
Sure. I think it's just innately my personality, first off, outside of the workplace. So it's easy
Yep.
for me to bring that to the table. And then also working in communications and marketing, it's part of
Gotcha.
the makeup there.
Totally fair. Again, reminder, neither side works is better or worse or anything. We're just getting a sense of where people end. So when you kind of put those together, what you're going to find, and I'm going to put it up here, if we actually broke those out into 4 quadrants, it would look like this. But I want to move very quickly from this to where it really gets to, which is this. So where DISC comes into play is you basically have, for starters, 4 different quadrants. The D quadrant, which is the top left, the I quadrant, which is the top right, the C quadrant, which is the bottom left, and then the S quadrant, which is the bottom right. Okay. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to do this. If you haven't already, in your disc, if you would open to page 2, and side note, as we go through this, if you ever get lost, just say, Scott, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what you're doing. But go to page 2. Page 2 should look, I'm hoping, can somebody just type in yes if it's true that your page 2 looks something like this? Good. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So let me add, this is the front page. Front page. Couple of things you'll notice. Top left is just like an overview paragraph, kind of a summary of DISC. But then I want you to notice to the right in the blue, there are some cornerstone principles. Okay. I'm just going to give you a second to look at those 5 bullets, those cornerstone principles. If you don't mind, just kind of read them on your own for a second. We'll call them the big 5 cornerstone principles. Okay. Good. So those are the big 5. Those are the big 5. And again, and the other thing is, if I get to going too fast, you can just scream either off mute or through the chat. But I got a question for you. And if you want to put this in chat or come off mute, however you want to play it, that first bullet, all DISC styles priorities are equally valuable. Why is that important? Why does that matter so much? Why is it so important? Maybe we do that through the chat. Why is that first bullet, why does that matter so much? That all styles and priorities are equally valuable. Ooh, good answer, Evan. Teams may be more effective with blended different styles. Anybody else? You know, one of the things I've done a lot of different discs. You know, I'll have people come in all the time and they'll say, Scott, which is the best disc? No bias. Good, Donna. It represents variety of the workforce, balance. Yeah, Doug, thank you. Good. I'll have people all the time that are walking to class and say, you know, which disc style is the best for a leader? And my response is always yours. It's so easy to fall into that trap, right? Of saying, I want to be just like my boss, or I want to be just like this person. You got to be you. You've got to be you. And they're all valuable. And the other thing that was kind of mentioned too, it's nice to have some from different styles from the 4 different quadrants. Also mentioned because everyone has a part to play in successful business. Everyone brings different strengths. Absolutely true. Couldn't said it any better. Okay. The other thing you're going to notice on page 2 is what you've got at the bottom. And it gives you a really nice overview of the 4 different quadrants. And then it gives you characteristics of each. I'm going to add a few, okay, if that's okay. And if you want to jot those right on page 2 at the bottom, or side notes, however you want to play it. First one is dominant or dominance. And you notice it's direct, firm, strong-willed, forceful, results-oriented. Let's add bottom line. So this is going to be under dominance. I'm gonna go as far as that. That'll take care of it. Dominance, direct, firm, strong-willed, forceful, results-oriented. Bottom line. Okay. Let's go top right. Top right is the I, which is influence. I have people all the time that will say, why is the I lowercase and all the rest are uppercase? It's just a trademark. So somebody, I guess, had either all caps or all lower of disc, and that's why they went with this. Top right, influence, outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, lively. Let's go with, if you want to add to that, engaged, or I don't know if networked is a verb or not, but you know a lot of folks. You're connected in a number of different ways. Okay, that's the I bucket. Okay, bottom left is the C, conscientiousness, analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic. What I typically have folks add there is prove it, data, numbers, stuff like that. My conscientiousness folks are not going to take things at face value. They want proof. So maybe add proof there. Okay. Bottom left. And then bottom right is steadiness, the S, even-tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, tactful. Let's add to that one fair. Fair. Okay. So those are the 4 quadrants I'm going to give you of DISC. Okay. So that's page 2. And again, we're starting, it's all about us, right? It's all about us first. Go to page 3. On page 3, and I have out in front of mine, I have mine in front of me as well. Page 3 is your actual disc style. And what you'll notice on that disc style, a couple things. It should say somewhere along the line at the top your dot and where it is, and in a box it will give you your disc style. Now your disc style could either be just D, just I, just S, or just C, or it could be a combination of 2. Okay. Can you do me a favor? Could you throw in the chat function just so others can see as well? What's your style? Jared, he knew I was going there. What's your style? Okay, good. Man, it's a little bit of all. I'm not really, let me go all the way up to the top. I see I's, I've got D's, I've got C's, I've got S's, a little bit of everything. I am a DC. So I'm right on the green line. I'm on the green line. Okay. So you'll see there, in the top of that, it really kind of shows you basically where you're at. Question for you. If you took this 10 years from now, would your style change? This is at work. If you took this in, oh my gosh, 2034, some of you are like, well, I will be retired. Thank you very much. Do you think it will change? Just throw it in the chat function. What do you think? Ooh, I got one no. Okay. Here's the funny thing. Stock answer from DISC is no, but I have to tell you, the more I do this, the more I see some change. Maybe not like massive change, but I see some change. Okay. So it can. I can think of, I took I'm looking at my first DISC when I got certified. I think I got certified 6 years ago-ish. I've taken one since, and it was a little bit more in the C bucket. And the reason was I was doing a lot of C-like items. Wow, Leah, you took it 5 years ago, changed only slice. Okay, isn't that interesting? See, I just think it kind of does. I think it kind of does. Okay, so we're still, everybody, interesting. So we're still on page 3. At the bottom of page 3, it talks about where your dot is. Okay, and so what you'll notice, I'm going to the next slide for me, but if you wouldn't mind, just stay at page 3. So what you'll notice here is your dot placement matters. Okay, so I'm moving left to right on this slide. You could have a slight positioning of your dot. If it's slight, if it's closer to the middle, that means that your preference is a slight preference, but you might be able to slide even back across the entire DISC wheel. Okay, that's slight. Moderate it's solid. Okay, it's in the middle. It's solid. Moderate to me equals solid. If you're out against the line, your preference is strong. What's funny about this is it's out on my slide. I've had people where it's almost like it feels like it's going to peel on the other side. So again, slight. Middle means you can kind of flip back and forth. Okay. Moderate is solid. Strong is, I'm pushing the limits. Okay. If you would throw in the chat function, let's go SL for slight, M for moderate, ST for strong. Lots of M's. Interesting. Lots of M's. Nice. Few strongs. I don't see a lot of S. Do I see any SLs? Wow. I don't know that I see any SLs. I don't see any. Wow. Interesting. Okay. So again, two different things we're kind of looking at. First is where our dot is, what our style is. Second is where our dot places it. So it gives you a little bit more of a picture of where you are. So my dot is more to the middle. Okay. Mine's, I'm an SL. I'm an SL. Okay. Everybody good so far? Let's keep moving. Go to page 4. Go to page 4 in your disc. So on page 4, I'm going to give you some time on this. Page 4, I call this the boring into your very soul page. That's what I call this. So page 4 is your story. Okay. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on this. I'm going to ask you to read your page 4. I'm assuming it's fairly lengthy. And I'm going to ask you to do this as you go through and you see the example on the slide. Put a check next to stuff that's like you. Put an X next to anything that's not like you. And then you notice that last, it says underline 3 statements. If you could underline even 2 statements that really describe you well, we'll do that. So I'm going to ask you to just take, let's give it 4 minutes. Can we do that? 4 or 5 minutes, read through it, take your time. I'm not going to rush, I promise. So again, check those things that are like you, X not like you, question, sure, not sure, and then underline 2 statements. And I'm going to go quiet. Thanks, everybody. All righty. So what I had you do, the thing that we were focusing on is I had you read your page 4, check some of those things that are like you. X a couple of those, or check those things are not like you. If you want to put questions next to anything, not sure, and then underlying 3 statements that best describe you. And I said, if you go 2, that's great. Here's what I'm going to ask you to keep the engagement up. Remember, we practiced earlier the breakouts. I'm going to put you in groups of 2 or 3. What I'm going to ask you to do when you get there, I'm actually going to move here. When you get to the breakout, remember you'll have to come off mute. Just share one of the 3 statements that best describes you, if you don't mind, because I'm going to go 2 to 3. Let me do this really quick. So again, I'm doing it totally random. I'm going to recreate. Yeah. So I've got you in groups of, it looks like mostly 3. There's one group of there's one pairing. Again, I'm going to open the room in just a second. Just share one of the, maybe you share your style, say I'm a D, I'm an S, and then one thing on page 4 that's absolutely me. Okay. So I'm going to put you in groups. Remember to come off mute. I'll send a note when we're 60 seconds from coming back. Thanks, everybody. 3, 2, 1. All righty. Well, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, you got a chance to share, one of those statements on page 4. Question: anybody willing to share what's one of the statements that was true for you? Roberta, you willing to share what was one statement you underlined on page 4? Do you mind me asking? Sorry. And you would have to come off mute.
No, not at all. You tend to be accepting of new people and ideas is one of them.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. Elizabeth, what about you? Is there one that jumped out at you?
Yes, I underlined you have very specific expectations for yourself and have a strong desire to do things correctly.
Nice. Perfect. Ronald, what about you? Anything that jumped out at you?
Yeah, that was I will find it again. I probably avoid disorganized people or unnecessary meetings.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Excellent.
It's a waste of time.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ronald.
That's me. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Question for all of you. Page 4. On a scale of 1 to 10, how true is it about you? How true is page 4 about you? 10 is, oh my gosh, they understand my innermost thoughts. 1 is, I think somebody mistakenly took the assessment. All right, good. I'm seeing 9, 10, not 8 to 10. Okay, fair. Somewhere in the 8 to, well, it's still sometimes. Okay, good. Fair enough. So we're somewhere in the 8 to 10 picture. Okay. So that's page 4. Just gives you kind of an overview, a picture of where you are. Okay. Let's keep moving. If you would, still in your disc. This is kind of where you're spending your time. Go to page 5. On page 5, it gives you a different look, and you may have something like this on page 5. So what we've done now is, instead of looking at the 4 quadrants, now we're looking at what's called workplace priorities. So around the outside of the circle, there are 8 workplace priorities: action, enthusiasm, collaboration, support, stability, accuracy, challenge, results. What you'll notice is you have either 3 of them bolded, 4 of them bolded, or 5. Okay. And you typically will have one of 2 scenarios. If you look at my slide on the left, the person is an I, and the 3 workplace priorities closest to the bullet, or to the dot, I should say, I'm sorry, to the dot, resonate with that style. So this person's an I, and their priorities are action, enthusiasm, collaboration. That's one option. The other, some of you may have this, your dots in the I, and you have action, enthusiasm, collaboration, but you can actually reach across. See the yellow and the dashed yellow slides over to accuracy. Okay. So it's usually one or the other. What I find, not always, but what I typically find is the more to the middle, your dot is, the more likely you might move across. Okay. So question number 1 for all of you, in the chat function, remember I said you're either going to have 3 priorities bolded, 4 or 5. Can you type in the chat function, I have 3, I have 4, I have 5 priorities bolded. Okay, 3. I'm seeing 3 to 4. Okay. All right. Everybody's in the 3 to 4 world. Okay. I had somebody, the last class I did, hit 5 actually, and he thought something was wrong with him. I said, nothing's wrong. I mean, it's just, a different priority. Second thing I'm going to have you notice is, if you look at the bottom of your page 5, so the top's your picture that looks something like what I've got on the slide. The bottom, if you have 3 bolded, you've got 3 summaries. If you have 4, you have 4 summaries. I'm going to ask you to read through those and underline, and I've got this example up here for you. Underline 2 statements when it comes to the priorities that really resonate with you, if that makes sense. Okay, so the top's your picture, and at the bottom you're going to have either 3 or 4. I think everybody in this group, it's either 3 or 4. Just read through those, and just like it's shown on this picture, underline two of the statements that really resonate with you personally at work. And I'm going to go silent, give you 3 or 4 minutes to work through that, and we'll come back. A few more minutes on this. Again, what you're doing is, depending on whether you had 3 priorities at the bottom of page 5, 4 at the bottom of page 5, we just had either 3 or 4. You're reading through those and underlining a couple of statements that you really, really like. Okay. Just curious. I'm actually gonna pick a couple people, if you don't mind me asking. Chris Sideout, and I hope I've got your name right. I apologize if I don't. Any of the statements on page 5 that really jump out at you? Chris, if you don't mind coming off mute.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Chris Saito here. I like this one because it says getting results, and it says, furthermore, you seem to be highly focused on results, which is not typical of my style, which is the SI style. It says, whether it's achieving your goals or simply reaching the next milestone, you tend to prioritize getting things done. As a result, you keep striving until you reach your objectives, regardless of the obstacles in your way. Ultimately, you probably make it clear that you're determined to succeed.
Interesting. Is that true about you?
This is pretty spot on.
So you're on the right, but you slide over in the D to the left a little bit.
I guess that's the meaning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Let's see, who else? Roberta, what about you? Anything on that page 5 that really spoke to you in terms of priorities?
Yeah, it said, I'd like to maintain a positive, upbeat attitude. Most likely, you assume the best in people and look at the bright side in any given situation, which is true. I usually go into it thinking the best of everybody. Pretty
So
accurate.
just curious, is that in the enthusiasm or is that under support?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm. I figured, but I
that's
just
good.
wasn't positive. Got it. Thank you. Perfect. Fawn, what about you? Anything that you underlined in there? What do you think?
I underlined under the enthusiasm, it says, you tend to assume the best in people instead of dwelling on their flaws. I have a lot of guys who report to me and they make mistakes. I mean, I feel like it's my job as management to train them better. That's why they made the mistakes. And
Fair
so
enough.
I try to train them, I give them more information and just help them through it. And hopefully next time they don't make the mistakes again. So that's how I
Yeah.
look at it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Great. So you kind of just see for all of you how the picture just looks a little bit different. So instead of going in the quadrants, now you get those priorities. So I think that's just always really interesting. Okay, so that's page 5. Before we go to page 6, I'm assuming at the bottom of page 5, hopefully you may have a little bit of space. I want to show this to you. I think it's kind of interesting. This is by quadrant activities that you might find interesting. Okay. So for the D's, it's actually even broken from DID, DC, and on around. And it just gives you activities that you might enjoy. So what I'm going to ask you to do is whatever your style is, maybe looking at least in that quadrant. So for example, I'm a DC. I'm going to challenge you. Maybe you start there, but you could go as wide as the D's. And I'm just going to ask you at the bottom of page 5, if you've got space, what are a couple of those activities that you say to yourself, you know what? That's me. I'm good with that. I'm comfortable with that. I'm just going to have you jot down, 1 or 2. And again, you could start in your small piece of the banana cream pie, but if you want to go to the quarter of the pie, what really speaks to you? What do you like? And just jot a couple of those down. What do you think? Ooh, ooh. Totally understand. Got that message. Yeah, don't sweat it at all. Totally understand. Once you do that, I'm gonna ask you, do you mind doing me a favor? Can you type in one of those that you're like, yeah, I can do that? Or, yeah, that sounds like fun. Or it's something that I'm really comfortable with doing, taking the lead. DI, problem solving with logic, creating team spirit, inspiring others. Interesting. Spotting problems. You know, it's funny as you read through those, they all work together, you know, they all work together, being there to support, ensuring accuracy, insisting on results. You know, you kind of look at that. Okay. Good, good, good. So let me ask you this. Let's suppose you're looking at, let's just play for a minute that you're D, hypothetically. I mean, you wherever you want, maybe you start your style, but looking around the wheel, you pick something in another quadrant that's part of your job description. It just doesn't fit in your preference. Does that make sense? So for example, you're a D, but you see something in the S and it's not really part of your style. Does that mean here we can't do that, or we're not capable, or what does that mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm in the D, but I see something in the S that I'm supposed to be doing, and I kind of struggle with that. What does that mean? Does that mean I'm not able to, or what's your take? What's your take on that? If that makes any coherent sense. Okay, good. Danielle says it's an opportunity for growth. Yeah. Anything else? What do you think? That's a good answer. Here, you know, here's one thing to think about that I found occasionally remain teachable. I like that a lot too, Chris. Remain teachable, remain willing to grow. There a couple of things, priority versus capable. Boy, that's a good answer, Sean, too. Yeah, I like all those. You know, I think for some of those, it's so easy to fall into this trap. And I've seen this happen, unfortunately. I'll get a group that does disc and something doesn't fall in their style. And they say, well, that's not something I need to focus on. That's not what we're saying at all. It may be something that you've got to be a little bit more deliberate about. If you had to do it long term, it may wear you out, you know, a little bit more. I think just for example, you know, I said I'm DC, but there are some things in C. I'm not a really great detail person. And so if I got into the analyzing in depth long term, some people really love that, and that's great. It might wear me out long term. I can do it. It's just not my particular go-to, a way to think about it, you know. Okay. Everybody doing okay? I'm going to take a quick break out of the curriculum for a minute. So because I always want to be conscious of making sure we've covered a lot so far, right out of the gate so far, first 5 pages. Questions you've got, if you would, you can throw them in chat if you want. If you want to come off mute, the only thing I would say is just say, hey, this is Sean, or this is anything that hits you so far, anything that jump out at you and you say, well, Scott, what about this? I mean, I want to make sure it's all about you. I know you're all busy as busy as you can be, but any questions so far through the first 5 pages? Anything that jumps out at you? Okay. Okay. Hey, listen, as we go through, if there is, please just say, hey, Scott, help me. I got a question. Okay. All right. Well, if that's the case, let's then go to page 6. Go to page 6. On page 6, you've got something that looks like this. I really like this page. So top right, it's got your style and your preferences. It's almost like we start to overlay stuff, right? At the top, it's what motivates you at work. And at the bottom, it's what really stresses you out. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to do this for me. I'm assuming you're going to have 8 to 10 bullets of motivators and 8 to 10 bullets of stressors. Take a look at those. Take a look at the top. Pick 1 or 2 that really speaks to you, and 1 or 2 that really stress you. And I'm going to go silent for a minute and I'll be right back. Thanks, everybody. So, where we were was page 6, couple of, had you pick 1 or 2 motivators and a couple of stressors. Okay. I'm going to do this again. Want to vary it up, make sure stay engaged. I'm going to put you back into small groups just for a minute. I'm going to reset the brakes, recreate. I'm trying to, hopefully 2 to 3 works. I feel like if I go bigger than that, it's kind of hard for everybody to get a chance. So I'm re-putting you in a different group. Just share, kind of go around the 2 or 3, couple of things that really motivate you, a couple of things that stress you. The groups are ready. I'm going to open the rooms in 3, 2, 1. All righty. Welcome back, everybody. So again, what we were doing, there we go. We're set. Just talking a little about some of those things that motivate you and some of those things that stress out. Just curious, I want to focus on the motivators. Danielle, what was one thing, if you don't mind coming off mute, what's one thing that motivated you? What's one thing you underlined?
Well, I have to do 2 because to me they're very connected. So creating enthusiasm and inspiring others to do their best.
Okay. Awesome. Good. Sean, what about you? What did you put as motive? What is 1 or 2 that motivates you?
I had initiating colorful projects and working toward challenging goals.
Nice. Leah, what about you? What were 1 or 2 that you felt like really motivated you?
I had working with people who have high standards and achieving efficient results. I'd also say emphasizing quality.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Awesome. Good. Question, anybody willing to share? If you're willing to come off mute, just tell me, hey, this is Jennifer, whoever it is. Anybody willing to share? What's one thing that kind of stressed you out?
I'll go first.
Yes.
This is Gerard here in Atlanta. I selected being in a dull or unsocial environment.
Why'd you pick that one?
I tend to lose focus in that environment.
Gotcha. You've got to be able to have multiple things going on and change a little bit. Yeah. Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome answer. Anybody else willing to share? What's one thing that stresses you out?
Hey, this is Nisha in Atlanta as well. And
Hey, Nisha.
the top one for me is partnering with overly cautious or indecisive people, because I just don't have time for that. Like, make a decision, let's get it going. We gotta have results. Let's do it.
Excellent. Good. Anybody else? Thank you. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the participation. Anybody else? What do you think?
This is Brittany.
Hey, Brittany.
Having little independence or private time.
You know, it's funny. I actually saw that. I'm looking at mine as well. I had that on mine as well. One more. Anybody else willing to share a stressor?
This is Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer.
Mine was having to keep my opinions to myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Again, one of the things I really want to emphasize to everybody, no right or wrong answers. It's and it's funny because I do think it's a good clarification about who we are. You know, what motivates us, what doesn't, what's a demotivator. Okay. Look at page 7, if you don't mind. On page 7, I'm hoping, can you throw this in the chat just so I'm good? Do you have an overview? Is page 7 for you, overview of the DISC styles? Is that correct? Is that what you have? Boom. All right, perfect. I do like this page. So as you look at it, it gives you, it breaks it into the 4 quadrants, but then for each one, it gives you priorities, what you're motivated by, what your fears are potentially, what you will notice about that style, limitations. I really like this page. If there was one page, I almost sometimes I've had people say this should be up front. Maybe so. I just think it's important sometimes to kind of get a sense of where it is. Correct on D 60%. Ooh, interesting. Correct on D 60% I. Interesting. You know what I also notice is look at the, I don't know what shape that is, the white. Is that a parallelogram? I don't know what that is. But it's almost like, how do you jump from the D to the I? How do you jump from the C to, does that make sense? It's that white shape, and it's why they are leaning next to each other is maybe a way to think that. You know, what I would think would be best is if we just got whatever our style is, if we just got a team of our style and they thought the way we did and they reacted the way we did, we'd be set, right? I mean, doesn't that make sense? What we really need to do is just get, you know, if our style's an I, we need a bunch of I's. If our style is C, we should get a bunch of C's, don't you think? What do you think about that? What's your reaction to that? Okay. Yeah. Totally kidding. You don't know me that well yet. I was doing disc and I was live and I'm walking out to my car and there was a senior leader and she walked out and she said, "Hey, thanks for the training." She said, "I'm a D." And I said, "Okay." And I said, "That's great." And she goes, "I have a problem." And I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "I hire me." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "I have a team of Ds." And I said, "How's that going?" And she said, "We just kind of butt heads a lot." She said, "In fact, I'm afraid there's going to be a fight in the parking lot." I think there's some benefit to having a combination of all the styles. My last corporate job, I had 6 trainers that reported to me. And one of my very best pairings was I had an I that I partnered with a C. They just seem to work really well together. Okay. So if there's one thing I would think, especially for those of you that are leaders or should be leaders soon, think about, you know, if you're missing a style, if you're missing, you know, maybe that will help complete and kind of round out the team a little bit better. Just something to think about. Okay. So that's page 7. To me, that's a highlight, really a highlight page when it comes to page 7. So right behind that, I've got this slide in here that kind of talks about the different styles and different folks. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. If you've got a place to write this down, if it's in the disc, right, if you're taking notes elsewhere, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you to think about, write down the names of 2 folks that either report to you or that you influence. Write down those names. I'm not going to ask you to particularly share those. And frankly, I wouldn't know Anyway, I just want you to write down the names of two folks. And while you're doing that, I'm going to do something that goes against everything I believe in, but I'm going to do it anyway. Write down two names or initials. Two names or initials, folks that report to you, folks that you influence. Hopefully you've got some space so you can kind of think through that. Okay. One of the things I think is really powerful about this, once you've got those two names down, is to spend a little bit of time thinking about what style they might be. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to do this for me. I want you to pick one of the two, doesn't matter which. And the people that you selected, it doesn't matter who you selected. It really doesn't. And we're just going to walk through a little activity that I'm going to have you kind of do on your own, but I'm going to narrate. So you've got Joe or Margaret or Mike or whoever it is. Here's a way to kind of walk through and think about what style they probably are. Step one, when you think about that person, are they more, looking at my slide, are they more fast-paced and outspoken? Or are they more cautious and reflective? I'm just going to give you a minute to kind of, maybe you put FO or you put CR. Are they more fast-paced and outspoken? Are they more cautious and reflective? Just pick one. Just pick one. Okay. Now, something to think about when you do that, if you pick for them fast-paced and outspoken, they're gonna probably be on the DI side, top of disc, top half. If they're more on the CR, they're gonna be probably more CS-ful. Okay, so that's step one. Step two, are they more questioning and skeptical? Or are they more accepting and warm? Give you a minute, just picking one. Just picking one. Okay. And then once you do that, what ultimately happens is you will find that person in 4 different quadrants that looks like this, right? Which will get you to this. So I'm asking you to do this with that first person based on that. And I know this is not highly technical, and I apologize for that. Are they more D-ful? Highly technical. Are they more I-ful? Are they more C-ful? Or are they more S-ful? Okay. Just give me a minute. That's with the first person. And then we're going to redo it with the second person, if that's okay. Okay. So hopefully you've got some sense of which quadrant they're in. Okay. That's the first person. Let's go back and do it again with the second person. I'm going backwards. Let me get there. Second person. Second person, step one. Are they more fast-paced and outspoken at work? Remember, this is always at work. They're going to be on the top half of the disc. They're going to be DRI, probably. Okay. Are they more on the cautious reflective side? They're going to be C or S, step 1. This is for the second person. Okay. Okay. Once you do that, very similar to what we've done in the past with the previous person you selected, are they more questioning and skeptical? Are they more accepting and warm? Okay. And once you do that, that's going to put you in one of the 4 quadrants. Which is going to put you here. Okay. Just a way to think about if you're not totally sure, it just gets the ball rolling, so to speak. It gets the ball rolling, so to speak. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm not looking for names. If you would do this for me in the chat function, my first person I think is a D. My second person I think is an S. Where you at? Based on what you're thinking, just curious. I threw an example in. Where do you think your 2 folks, and again, it could be either folks that report to you. Ooh, both S's. Interesting. Nice. Good. Both C. Okay. Brittany, both S's, or D. Okay. Oh, you pick 3 folks. Totally cool. Kind of see where we're headed, right? Ooh. Some of you even went as far as kind of breaking it even into smaller pieces of the pie, which is very nice. Okay. All right. So now that we've done that, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Look at go to page 8 just for a second. Go to page 8 just for a second. I'm going to get back to where I'm supposed to be. Sorry about that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to think about one of the 2. I would just do one at a time. Think about one of the 2 and think about what their style is. So for the person that you selected, if they're a D, I'm going to have you go to page 8 in your disc. If they're an I, the person you selected, you go to page 9. If they're an S, you go to page 10. And if they're a C, you go to page 11. And what you're going to notice is this. I'm going to start on page, I'm going to work out of my page 8. Again, I've got my disc in front of me. At the top, it gives you a summary of how you react to that style. So it starts with you, but projects to the person. And then about halfway down in the middle of the page, there's a box that says to you, people with that style may seem, and it gives you a few ideas. But then at the bottom, what's the motivation for their behavior? Okay. So I'm going to ask you to do this for one of the folks. You pick either one. You're either on page 8 for a D, 9 for an I, 10 for an S, 11 for a C. Just go through that. Circle, highlight things that jump out. This first step is all about understanding that style. One of the things you'll notice, you may pick somebody that has your style. Totally fine. And these, side note, these are not stock pages, regardless, depending on what style you are. It's how would you relate to that style. Okay, so you're either on page 8, page 9, page 10, or page 11. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. So I'm going to go silent, just thinking through, and we'll come back. Thanks, everybody. All right, well, hopefully you started with, again, either page 8, 9, 10, or 11. I really think when I think of 8, 9, 10, and 11, those are really the why pages. Why did they react or think or do what they're doing? But then once you've got that, I'm going to ask you to move forward and look at page 12 through 15. You're still working with that same first person. So if they're a D, I'm going to ask you to go to page 12. If they're an I, go to page 13. An S, go to page 14, and a C, 15. And what you'll notice, I'm looking at page 12, which is the D. They're all set up the same way. It gives you some really good ideas when trying to connect with that style, when problems need to be solved with that style, when things get tense with that style. Okay. I'm going to have you look at, depending on which style, go to that associated page and maybe look through anything that jumps out with you for you there. In any of those 3 buckets, the when trying to connect, when problems need to be solved, when things get tense. Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to kind of look through this one as well, and then we'll come back. All righty, so hopefully you were able to pick one of your folks, think about style. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Anybody willing to come off mute and share what's one thing that you picked up? I'm not looking for a name, but maybe say I was thinking about someone that had this style and this is what I learned. Anybody willing to come off mute and share one takeaway in those pages? Anything that really jumped out at you?
Hey, this is Donna.
Hey, Donna.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, one thing that I do think that I probably need to pay more attention, it jumped out to me, is with working with a D, with the abruptness, and if you're trying to make everything nice and easygoing, their directness, it's not a personal attack on you.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It's not personal. It's, yeah, great point. Thank you. Anybody else? Thanks, Donna. Anybody else want to share?
I'll go. The first person I picked was a D.
Okay.
The statement, I can see her when I read this. They strive for success and won't give up just because they run into a few obstacles. This describes her to a T.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else want to share a pickup there?
I'll share. I have a lead CSR, and she's a strong S, and Corey can probably agree with me on this one, but she's motivated by stable environment. She's sincere, appreciative, cooperative, and always trying to help somebody. So this is very eye-opening with my two lead CSRs.
That's awesome. Thank you. Good. Anybody else? I'm looking for just one more.
I also had an S, and one of the things that stood out was S coworkers probably tend to take more cautious and accommodating approach, which sometimes may seem indecisive.
Excellent. Good. Good. Well, hopefully, as you think about that, you see, I had you pick a couple, but just from a time standpoint, you start with one, and the first pages 8 through 11, I believe, kind of gets you to the, why is that perhaps happening? And then you get to the second page is 12 through, I believe it's 15, really talks about what are some great tips. So I just wanted to point those out to you. Couple of other things, just broadly thinking about some ideas as you look at my slides broadly, working with each style, just some things to think about. D style, trying to get to the point more quickly. I'm not going to read each of these. I do think one, and somebody mentioned it right up front, that don't take abruptness personally. I can think of a situation I was working at a company, and there was a leader by the name of Sean, and Sean was very much D. And I'm talking to my boss, and I'm going to get with Sean and give him a summary of a project. And my boss said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." He goes, "Yeah, but are you ready?" And I thought, what am I in for? I had also heard that Sean at one point in college had played at linebacker at Notre Dame. And so I go over to his office, I walk in, I sit down. Sean and I had met before, and I said, "Sean, I heard you play linebacker for Notre Dame." And he said, "That's not what we're doing here today. That's not why we're here." And I went, "Oh." He said, "Just walk me through where we are." And so I went immediately to bullet, got through everything. He was totally fine. And at the end of it, he looked at me and said, "Sometime we'll talk about Notre Dame." It just wasn't the time. He was in that D mode. Nothing wrong with that, right? I gives you some thoughts, relationship being a priority, making sure to hear them out, being supportive. Just some ideas broadly around the I style with the S. And I never want to say always, but thinking about being more collaborative, making sure to encourage them to take risks. And then finally the C style. And again, I'm just some high level things to keep in mind. I think the biggest one that jumps out at me on this one is making clear fact-based arguments. Okay, so just kind of some high level things. But if you would, look at page 16. On page 16, we're back to It's All About Us again. So on page 16, it's saying you should have, sometimes when we go through this, we find ourselves saying, okay, what's one thing I can apply walking out the door? It's giving you 3 ideas. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just give you a few more minutes. Look through those 3 and maybe put a star next to just one of the 3 that you say to yourself, yeah, that's probably a good idea for me to start with. Okay. Again, I'm going to go silent. I'll be back in a few. So you're just picking one of the 3 that really jump out at you. Thanks, everybody. Alrighty, so page 16 again gave you 3 key strategies, and I ask you to pick one. If you would, in the chat function, would you type in one of the 3 strategies? If you were going to pick one, and you can even keep it to a couple of words. I don't want you to feel like you got to overtype, but if there was one of the strategies to focus on, what would it be? What jumps out at you? Anything really jump out at you? Or, of course, you can come off, give others time to process your message. I think that's a great point. Direct with tough feedback. That's a great one. Show more openness, new initiatives. Good. Celebrate, respond quickly. Consider the impact of your words. Celebrate what's going on right. Instead of focusing on what's going wrong, change is hard. Get things right the first time. Good. Fix flaw, reject versus rejecting the idea altogether. Good stuff. I really, really like page 16 because I feel like it's one of those, sometimes there's this invite people to share your opinions, direct approach. Remember, many people will not share their concerns if you seem too forceful, determined. Yeah. You get all this out of disc and then you say, okay, where do I start? What's one thing I can do? Page 16 to me is really okay, if there's one, what am I going to do tomorrow? What could I start with? What do I need to remember? Where do you start? So wanted to share that with you. Acknowledge problems rather than glossing over them. Good, good. Yeah, good stuff. A lot of good stuff. Okay, good. So that's page 16. And then behind that, if you would look at page 17 through 20. 17 through 20. I like this. This is a snapshot of every single one of the styles in a little bit more depth. So what you have, if you look, for example, 17 has the D's, 18 has the I, so on and so forth. For each one, it's going to give you the style, the priorities underneath your DISC style. It's going to be goals, judges others by, influences others by, and then to the right, it gives you a summary. So what you could legitimately do with pages 17, 18, 19, and 20 is, as you think about your folks, think about folks that report to you, think about folks that you influence, think about your boss, right? It gives you a summary, some ideas, and all of it is from your perspective. So I just find that really interesting. It's kind of tucked in the back, but it gives you a lot of cool stuff. A lot of cool stuff. Okay. So I'll give you just a couple minutes. To take a look at that. Again, know that you've got this entire, this is yours, that 1 through 20, your disc is for you to keep. Okay. But I do like that, again, pages 17 through 20. Okay. All righty. So we covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Before I let you go, can you do me a favor? Can you go back to the beginning of your disc, go to the front, page 1, and flip, and just flip. What's one cool thing that you really liked? What's one cool thing you liked about disc? I'm just going to give you a minute to kind of flip through anything at all that you really liked, that you thought was cool, anything that was helpful at all. Give you a minute to think about that. And once you've, oh, okay, diversity, Jared, good. Diversity of styles, yeah. If anybody, if you don't mind coming off mute, what's one cool thing you liked? What'd you like about disc? Anything that really jumped out at you? Allows to work with other disc good, better insights, team members, good, excellent, good. Understanding personalities in order to meet my customer. Nice, nice. Strategies to work with other styles. Good. I'm here. I'm seeing good things. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of good stuff. Dealing with other folks. Okay, good, good. Awesome, Kyle. We've got a couple of extra minutes. Anybody have, and by no means do I want to never feel like I've got to keep you at the very end particularly, but any questions? Anything around this that we didn't hit that you were wondering about that you say to yourself, Any questions about this? And you can certainly come off mute. Put it in chat. Any questions you've got? Anything you were wondering about?
What is that one word we added to D?
Added to which, to D?
Yeah.
What did we add? Was it bottom line?
Yep, bottom line.
I think.
Yeah, that's
bottom
it.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was bottom line. Good.
And the reason for that.
The reason for that, I feel that here's what you'll sometimes get with a D if you're talking to a D. If they start to feel like it's dragging on, they might say something like, hey, listen, bottom line, what's going on here? We need to get to the point, so to speak. So that's kind of why I put that one there. Anybody else? It's interesting seeing what the others probably seeing you in the workplace. Yeah, isn't that something too? Okay. Awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, we're going to stop there. So couple of things between now and next time. If you wouldn't mind bringing your disc back for next time, that would be great because I'll at least do a review through disc first thing. Second thing, I'm going to get a workbook to Doug, who will get it to you for next Tuesday. Hopefully get that to Doug by tomorrow so we can get it out. Third thing, just something to ask, and it's, if you don't mind, when you log in next week, if you could put in, if you're able to do this, like first name, last name, or even just first name, that way I can say, hey, Kyle, or, if you don't mind doing that, if you don't want to, totally understand. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed it. Great first start. Appreciate all of the participation. But with that, if there's nothing else, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Get back to your, what is today? Tuesday. But I will talk to you next Tuesday. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank you,
great
Scott.
rest of your week. Thanks, Doug. Take care,
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thanks,
Labor Day.
everybody.
We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.